Mr. Cottom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bullard. Superintendent Downey, committee members. This project will allow Bossier Parish School Board to meet the requirements set forth by the Louisiana State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, primarily the Louisiana School Transportation Specifications and Procedures that basically outlines the requirements for transportation students within a 1 mile, that live within 1 mile of their school they attend. So we've been kind of looking at this project for about a year. There's a neighborhood to the west of Legacy, Bell Rose neighborhood, that's approximately 178 residential houses. So we're proposing to add this sidewalk that will allow that entire neighborhood to become a walk zone, and that will free up a bus route, and it will, like I said, it will up us to the standards that we currently do in other locations. Let me further. So I have spoken with Robert Jeter. He is the president of Legacy HOA Group. He is on some of the, I would call it the service agreement. That's not drawn yet, but any questions?
Colonel Haddon is with us today. Colonel Haddon, do you have anything to add? I'm sure this meets with your approval.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it does.
Any members of the committee have any questions? Any members of the board? Oh, Ms. Brotherton.
So, Mr. Cottom, the developer of this subdivision, they do not have to pay anything. We're going to pay it all.
Yes,
it's going to come out of our pocket.
Yes, ma'am.
And what is going to be the cost of all of that?
I'm currently estimating about a total project cost, which does include the engineering fees, about $75,000 to $100,000. There is when you come onto our property, there is a drainage ditch, so we do have to have some elevations and some culverts, and so there's a little bit more work involved than the traditional just a sidewalk through a field.
Is it coming out of general fund, or where is?
Well, currently it's, and Ms. Bamberg can help me. It's coming out of some of the unreconciled bond funds that we're currently looking at. Let me see, you want to?
It's coming from some of the interest earnings in the bond fund, and so we're still reconciling that fund out, but we know that there's enough to cover this project, and so that's what my recommendation was as far as funding for this.
So these children walk to school now? They just don't have a sidewalk, or
No, they're currently a bus route.
Oh, it's a bus route.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Brotherton, if I could interject a little bit from the MPC perspective. I'm one of the MPC commissioners for, the parish. The neighborhood north to this, their parents were complaining that they couldn't, they needed sidewalks to walk to a pool down the road. I made it clear at the MPC meeting, if you put that sidewalk to the north, you now create a walk zone for this area. The problem that we have is that kids would have to cross over 5 roads, which means we would need to put in the crosswalks. We may have to have crossing guards, but by that neighborhood putting in that sidewalk, by law, this area is a walk zone. The safer alternative is to use this method. We won't have to pay for the crossing guards. We can eliminate, well, I would tell you eliminate a bus driver, but that's really not the case. I need that bus driver 17 other places, so just be clear about that. But yes, ma'am. So really, even though this may cost $75,000 to $100,000, the savings is going to be, we're going to see the savings very quickly. Okay.
House, I believe.
Mr. Cottom, you said that the walk zone is a mile.
Yes, sir.
Colonel or Mr. Cottom, have you ever received a request from any of the parents in Halton to have a bus carry their child to school so they don't walk a mile on McKinley Street or crossing the tracks, crossing the intersection? In other words, Colonel mentioned danger, that it's dangerous for
Yes,
them
sir.
to walk.
So there is,
Have you ever been down McKinley Street at 7:15 a.m.?
well, I tell you what, my dad drove trains for 44 years, so I rode a bunch of trains through Houghton. And so I'm pretty familiar with that. There are no walk zones in Houghton, with the exception of Houghton Elementary has a walk zone at Fox Chase, so that one neighborhood next to the school, and Houghton Middle School has a walk zone. I think it's Tuscany, just the front part of that. That's the only walk zones that we have in Houghton. Children, if they're walking because they choose to walk. We have buses to service all those areas.
Strange, because since I've been on the board, I've had at least 5 families that I've referred to transportation that said that their children are walking in wet grass. The traffic is extremely high on McKinley Street in particular, and it takes them quite a while in the rain on occasion to walk to school. So these people haven't called?
There's not a walk zone. Now, if you go across the tracks, I think it's to West Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Now, we have received phone calls because they've walked to the corners. So on the McKinley, no, sir, in 6 years, I haven't received one. But on West Jackson, I think it's West Jackson. Ms. Brotherton, am I right on that, across the track? I think it's West Jackson.
Right.
That one we have had some. But again, we have bus pickups in all those areas, but you need to walk to the corner.
You have bus pickups
Yes, sir.
down McKinley Street.
Yes, sir.
They're just choosing not to.
We can go to Find My Bus. If you'll put any address that you like, sir, put in an address and put Houghton High School, middle or elementary, and we can see what bus is supposed to pick them up.
Ms. Darby?
Yes. So that, you say it's a walk zone. So all the students in that area walk to school?
Are we talking about this area?
No, we're talking about Legacy.
At Lexington, this is
Yeah.
not a walk zone today. No, ma'am. It has always been a bus pickup. What we want to do is to create a walk zone so that these students can walk right out this one particular lot and move to the school.
But I'm asking, when it becomes a walk zone then, what provisions do you have in place for inclement weather or?
The state, the Bulletin 119 does not provide any provisions for weather.
So they'll still have to walk?
Unfortunately, yes, ma'am. 1 mile. That's pretty much standard across the country, too. That's not just a Louisiana law. That is all across the country.
Or their parents.
Or their parents can take them. Yep.
Mr. Bachhaus?
You said it was a 1 mile radius for a walk zone?
No, sir, it's not a radius. It's 1 mile. So the way we measure it is we would choose a home, and you go from the driveway or the sidewalk as you enter the house. So not the sidewalk in front, but say there's a sidewalk that goes to the front door. You measure from there to the nearest entrance of the school. Now, the way they measure the entrance, if we could look at, say, a Bel Air, where they have where the bus ramp is and the kids can come to the bus ramp, once you get on Bossier Parish property there, that's where you measure from. And it's how you walk from your house to the school, not radius. So, and it's a little bit more complicated because if I have a crosswalk, a child may need to walk down to a crosswalk, cross over, and then go. So it's not just a direct. So every situation is going to most likely be different.
So if I live on Tillman Drive, I walk down to the bridge that crosses the
Yes,
ditch
sir.
right out
You're
here,
right. I did that as a kid.
and then come back up to
I'll walk to the bridge, and I'll walk all the way up to where the ramp is going into the school. So not just the sidewalk when you get on Apollo's property, it says the entrance to the school. So let me go back to Bel Air. Bel Air used to have a gate in the back. The gate was open. The kids would walk through the gate and they would go to the school. Because of all the security measures, they locked the gate. That forces me to change the walk zone. And so additional neighborhoods in the Bel Air area, since I've been the director, has become a bus pickup. And it's sometimes hard for some of the folks to understand, but those walk zones could change based upon safety.
Okay, thank you, Colonel. One more question for Mr. Cottom. These houses, this subdivision, they have a homeowners association?
Yes, sir.
Have they been involved in
Yes, sir.
possibly paying for this
Oh,
also?
No,
Not
sir.
just the contractors?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Faulting?
Just to clarify, the part in red from leaving the school to where the red ends, how far, that's not a mile, right?
It's, I think it's around 475 linear feet. I mean, that's, plus or
Now,
minus.
I guess because it's such in my mind, it's a long way for kids to walk. So when they're walking to school, they're walking from school, they'll have parents with them. Is that, Colonel Haddon, is that a rule, or? No, sir. These kids, I'm just wondering, or if not, will there be teachers kind of along the walkways to kind of supervise or watch them?
The law doesn't prevent for that. It doesn't say. I would say, as far as for walking, unfortunately, we have 4-year-old preschool kids that walk up to a mile to school. Most of them walk with their parents. Meadowview is a good example of having walking trains. So they start over by Cope, and they walk together across the street. And as they continue to walk through Meadowview, all of a sudden you will wonder, where did 30 or 40 kids show up from? And so they have a good safety measures in place that they have this train, and they also have teachers that are placed out. That's not at all schools, but that's one great example of how Meadowview takes care of their children.
Okay.
And to further word, the red sidewalk sort of ends right there. That is where our car line stages around the north side of the campus. So there most likely would be a teacher stage there to allow the kids to navigate through the car line traffic.
Mr. Bertrand?
Where would they enter the school? Is there certain for security reasons? I'm sure they can't go through any door. Am I right, AJ? They would have a predetermined entrance for that. Okay.
Ms. Bertrand, I believe that, the principal's been involved in some of this. The kids could come down and turn and come to the front. It's a little hard to see. There's a gate there. Once they cross over the line, there is a sort of north-south avenue, or they could go directly into the wing, so.
Any other questions? I had one comment, or I guess a question. Somebody help refresh my old feeble brain, but several years ago, do y'all recall, we were receiving these grants to put in the walkways, inner city, through some of the more congested areas. Was that, okay, I couldn't recall where, but this has been something that has been addressed before. Here we're in a suburban subdivision situation, but even in inner city, we've addressed it. So
Dr. Shelley Barrett, I think, was part of adding the sidewalks onto Swan Lake Road, and that was done in 2014.
thank you. I recall it just enough to be dangerous. I couldn't keep, I didn't have all the details.
And that's NLCOG, Northwest Louisiana Council of Government. That's who she works for.
And Mr. Newman?
Sorry, I'm late, by the way, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I did have a question on this when I saw it come up. Eliminating bus routes, it doesn't fall within the 1 mile issue that we have elsewhere. I'm afraid we're going to open a can of worms. Because it says we'll eliminate bus routes, but with savings, but at the same time,
Actually, we're not eliminating. We've gone, since I've been here in the 6 years, we've gone from 238 routes a day. We're running about 205 today. The reality is 205 is the wrong answer. We need 214, 215 to carry the increase. So it would eliminate one if I had everything else covered. But I've got a hole at Apollo, Central Park, Sun City, and Russian today that I don't have any drivers for.
And I believe you previously addressed the fact that there is a bus route or bus service today, but it's because of specific existing conditions which will be corrected and alleviated with a sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
And that would then take it out of the legal requirement.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Brothers.
Just one more question. Have we had any complaints from these parents about this, not wanting their child to walk in the weather instead of riding a bus? Have we had any complaints on the other side that do not want this? I mean, because they're going to go from riding on a bus, which
Right.
dry, to now walking in the rain or whatever.
Well, I believe that, I guess the answer would be by law, it has to be converted to a walk zone.
By law, we have to do that.
Yes, ma'am. That was our answer. I mean, we know there was going to be some concern.
Well, if you'd have said that, no, just okay, I get it.
Yes, sir.
Colonel Haddon, Mr. Cottom, I was involved in this conversation, actually toured that subdivision, and our efforts in totality, as far as this situation is concerned, is just to be consistent with the rule that we're applying to every other school in the district that meets these criteria, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So we're not treating these students any different than we are kids at Beaujorel, Russian, Sun City, wherever. They may walk when it's raining if their parents don't drive them, and we're just trying to be consistent, correct?
Yes, sir.
Alton, did you have a question?
Yeah, one more thing. The patch that's in the neighborhood, who is responsible for keeping that maintained? If something cracks or grass, are we supposed to maintain that part even though it's theirs, or will
The
they maintain
grounds
it?
themselves, no, that will remain as part of the Belrose HOA. As far as the concrete sidewalk, that would fall on us.
Okay.
But as far as edging, we don't go outside of our property.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we authorize staff to proceed with the project for Legacy Elementary new sidewalk.
We have a motion to approve the request. Do I hear a second? Second. Have a second from Mr. Newman. All in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Cottom. Moving on to our second item, Halton High School movable basketball goal systems. This is for discussion and also action. Again, Mr. Cottom.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You have the floor.
Yes, sir. So on July 20th of this year, the board approved the replacement of what we call these movable basketball goals with suspended goals. And the school was contacted by the original supplier for these, that they were offered to buy them back and haul off when they're no longer needed. So our board policy requires that if they are deemed surplus, then that item can go out for bid or quotes, and that is our board policy. So since we currently have an offer, it's just a request to waive that and to accept the offer as noted.
I'll make the motion.
Have a motion. Do I hear a second? Do I hear? We have a motion and a second. Yes, sir, Mr. Backhouse.
We're legally able to change and waive bid procedures.
Yes, Will?
To waive the bid?
Yes, it says,
Just to waive the policy.
Waive the policy.
waive the sealed bid, public auction, and accept the offer. Waive the sealed bid. we're able to do that?
Yes, we can suspend it, yes.
Okay.
Was that what I just did?
Yeah, you approved of declaring an
Okay.
existing movable
We got
wall
to
systems
do this first.
Yeah, you just
As
declared them
surplus.
surplus.
Yeah, we got to do that first.
Okay, thank you.
Members of the committee, you've heard the motion and the second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Cottom. Moving on to item number 3, Benton High School baseball facility improvements. Again, this will be presented for discussion and action by Mr. Cottom.
Yes, sir, thank you. So this is, again, a previously approved project. Just in summary, out of these two, we have gotten a quote back, and it is higher than what we initially estimated. The structure, material increases, there's a little bit more site work that wasn't counted for in the initial quote. So that's really what the request is, to have additional funds approved to come out of their Benton High School's current surplus of bond funds. Any questions?
Committee's heard the presentation. Are there any questions? Any comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Authorize an amendment to the individual project for baseball facility improvement with $107,000.
We have a motion. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Newman. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Cottom.
sir, thank you.
I think you get to sit down now.
Yes, sir, thank you.
The final two items, number 4 and 5, will be presented by Mr. Clarence Babineau with SGB Architects. And it has been requested that we combine those two, so it'll be a single presentation. I believe, if I understand correctly, Mr. Babineau, you would prefer to address number 5, the roof replacement update first.
I can move it to the same order as your agenda. It's just 2 or 3 slides. So if you want to stay on the exact agenda, if you're just, okay. Stuart, if you would, just advance it to 3 slides. There you go, right there. All right. So thank you again. Appreciate being here. It's been a few months since the last B&G, so we haven't seen each other for a little while. But Stuart, if you'll give us the next slide, please. Okay, we're going to start with Houghton High School. That's, of course, the last project of the 2012 bond program. As of Pay App 37, which we received in June, we have not received a Pay App since that point. The project is officially by the pay application 97.12% complete. The fire marshal issued their letter of completion. The certificate of substantial was issued by the architect for completion officially on June 27th. By state law, there's a lien period that begins 45 days after the substantial completion certificate is filed at the Bossier Parish Courthouse. That gives anyone, a subcontractor, for instance, so they have an issue with the contractor, to file a lien. That lien period expired August 14th. The contractor has been working on his punch list. He's got a large majority of it done. There's still some things not quite done. He's got some exterior work to complete, and then a few interior punch list items which he's begun working on. The punch list, of course, because school has started, he's got to do it in such a way as to not disturb school activities. That's in the contract. So mostly that requires him working outside or working nights or weekends, or at some point so as not to disturb school operations. And as far as I know, that's all been done cooperatively so far. There were 2 liens filed, one by the masonry sub, the original masonry sub, and then one by the air conditioning and plumbing subcontractor for a total of $177,000. So what happens is those amounts are withheld from payment to the contractor until those liens are satisfied. He can satisfy them by paying those if they finally come to agreement and the liens are removed, or he can simply provide a construction bond to bond around those. So far, we received nothing either way. So right now, we're still holding that money back, just an FYI. And liquidated damages withheld up to the point of substantial completion, we began holding $1,500 per day beginning October 1st through June 26th is $403,500. That money's also been withheld from the contractor. Any questions on that slide? All right, next slide, please, Stuart. All right, so the original the contract amount through change order number 7 is $9,724,000 and change. There is an outstanding change order of about $24,000. The contractor has not signed. Well, don't know why, he just has not signed it, so nothing's been done, although the work's been done. For some reason, he just has not signed it. Subtracting from that, the liquidated damages leaves us a current contract amount of $9,321,419. He's been paid $8,484,700, leaving a balance of $836,719. So, and that $836 is for the retainage, which is a little over $400,000. The punch list, which is around $278, and then any incomplete work he just has not completed. So that's where we stand right now with the contract. He will be finishing soon. I'll go with the architect to do a final inspection at the point where he notifies us we are done. And then there's one final inspection, and then we wrap it up. Yes, sir.
The 836 does include the 177 for the liens, or does
Yes.
not?
Yeah.
It does also?
Yeah, it's all wrapped up in there. Yeah. Any other question on that part, on that slide? Okay, next slide, please, Stuart. So just a couple of photographs of where we are. Of course, if you've driven by, the work is pretty well complete. We've got to get some tightening up on those trees in the front, but this is the new front from McKinley Street. This is the front of the admin, which is just to the left of this photo. So I think the building looks pretty nice. Of course, it's a very close match to the S wing, which was built about 15 years ago, which is right behind this wing, and actually that wing, which fronts Hazel Street. So we've got a little bit more of a cohesive look to the campus right now on 2 major streets. Any questions on that slide? All right, next one, please. A couple of interior shots. We've got a standard classroom. This was just after the furniture was delivered, so this is before the teachers actually fully moved in. This is the typical computer lab. There are 6 of those. Those worked out really nicely with the 32 computers for each of the students and teacher's desk in front. But of course, if you've been down there, you know they're fully operational and fully using the wing. Any questions? All right, next slide, please. Just because this is our final report to you on the bond program, because Houghton is now officially completed, at least it's substantially complete. I want to give you just a little bit of passing information as we part. Since the beginning of March 2020, which is really when COVID started hitting and things started changing radically, as everyone probably painfully remembers, construction costs have about doubled. There are several reasons for it. We've got the inflation created by COVID shutdown and reopening and issues with supply chain issues, which still plague some issues right now. We've got the new requirement, because a new code went into effect, of including tornado shelters in schools. That has a big impact. And in some cases, the tornado shelters add square footage to the school to accommodate the tornado shelter. So you have 3 whammies that have conspired, if you will, come together and having created that little issue. Of course, you don't have anything on any bond program schools coming up, but just for future reference, it's going to cost a lot more, unfortunately, today than it did some years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, just have an increase because we're saying these things are...
If you go back, the state put in the requirement, then rescinded the requirement for a year, and that's when we bid the wing at Houghton, at Benton, intermediate build. From this point forward, we'll have to have a tornado shelter in it.
Are we still eligible to request a waiver on that?
It's now back in the law. Now, you can apply for federal funds. There are methodologies to apply through the governor's office for federal funds, but that's an 18-month process. So just be aware that that is coming. In fact, there's a middle school, I spoke to the architect over in, I think it's Sterlington. They finished and they had to add a tornado shelter. There's a new school being planned in DeSoto that's going to have a tornado shelter. So right now, there are no waivers I'm aware of.
Is that 100% funding of that additional requirement, or is it just, like, how are those funds?
The Governor's Office of Homeland Security runs that program. They come from the federal government and distributed to each state. It's a competitive process, so everyone competes for a fixed number of dollars. What I've been told is that because There are storm shelter requirements in South Louisiana for hurricanes, which is different than the storm shelter requirement for tornadoes in our part of the state. Our shelters are smaller, but they have to be stronger to withstand higher wind loads than in South Louisiana. But because of the frequency of hurricanes, what I'm told is that if there's going to be a competitive process and there are limited dollars, the likelihood is that money is going to go to South Louisiana where there's more incidents of hurricanes than in our part of the state with fewer instances of tornadoes. So you can apply for them, but if you apply for them and you want to receive them, you can't really do anything for the 18-month period. In the meantime, those costs keep rising. So right now, you can apply. It's anyone's guess whether the funds would actually be available to you, though. All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, next slide. Okay. Just the bond surpluses that we've been providing you for quite some time. Houghton, because although it's substantially complete, there's still some activity, so I'll keep it as a current project. We've got a surplus right now of $676,000. The list below, the dozen or so projects down here from completed projects, primarily from Benton High, Cope Middle, and the Houghton High paving project, we've got surpluses totaling $499,000 for a total all surpluses of $1,175,489. So that's still a little bit of play money you've got for anything coming up. Okay. Any questions?
How is that factored into all this?
The LDs are assumed right now in your pocket, so that is included in that 676. If for some reason it gets reversed, that number's going to come down by the $400,000 LD. So it'd be like 275 or thereabouts.
Does that include the liens?
No, the liens, we expect the liens eventually get paid and taken care of, so you're going to probably pay that money at some point. The only number that could possibly reverse I'm aware of are the LDs. Okay. But right now it's looking in our favor.
That could change.
Potentially. I think we're waiting on a ruling right now, if you know what's going on with that. So hopefully we'll know that answer in a few days. Fingers crossed. Maybe. I will tell you this. As a precaution, every time we estimated one of your projects, we built in a contingency line item, okay? Whenever the board approved a budget, they approved what's called the project budget, which is the construction plus fees, plus desk, plus technology, our fees, the architect's fees, everything like that. And I always include a separate line item for anything that pops up. So I still have some contingency funds in the Houghton line item. If those items go unspent, which is quite likely, then that number will go up substantially. Okay?
No, for turf field? Just teasing.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see. Can't tell you just yet.
Just teasing.
I understand. Any other questions?
So just to make sure it's clear in my mind, out of the 210 million approved for this bond issue, there's 1.175 million remaining for utilization.
Surplus. Basically, the project's complete.
These are uncommitted funds.
Uncommitted,
that
correct.
are available.
Correct.
Then, in addition to this, and I'll direct this to Ms. Bamberg, we have interest on the funds that have been held in escrow or on deposit, and then we have premium received on the sale of certain bonds in addition to that. So
Yes, sir.
funds directly tied to the issuance of the $210 million bond issue.
Yes, sir. They have to be spent for the same purpose, which would mean construction. Now, not all of the premiums are available. Some of the premiums were deposited into the debt service fund, and so some of those went towards paying off the debt. But that's what we're still reconciling, is to see, we've been working with Mr. Babineau on fully reconciling to see what funds are available.
And I understand that because the board agreed at your recommendation that we would need to apply a portion, significant portion of premium to debt retirement.
This was actually a prior year. This is going to be some prior year premiums. And so when the premium was received directly on the bond, and this would be before I got here, those were applied directly towards the debt service fund, which went towards future debt service payments.
Which is appropriate.
Yes, sir. It was appropriate based on those bonds.
So we can retire them a little earlier, hopefully.
That's the hope.
But we do have some interest that.
Yes, sir. We
would
do
add.
have some interest earnings in there.
Fine. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay.
Please continue.
Yes, sir. Next slide, please, Stuart. Okay. Since this is our last report to the board on the 2012 bond program, I thought we'd finish with a little bit of a report card. I'll make it very quick. I know you've got other meetings scheduled. So under our purview, we spent $198,941,741. Keep in mind, that's less than the 210 the voters approved. The first $7.5 million went to pay debt off early at the very beginning of the program. You've got the $1,175,000 surplus, and then you've got the funds also not shown for the project over at Parkway High School, new field house. So those all add up. For the 4 new schools that were built, total project budget of $130,541,598 was spent and created 250 classrooms. The 7 wings that were built cost $44,949,585 for 143 classrooms. There were 23 miscellaneous projects that cost $15,704,000. That paid for secure entrances, bus drives, parent drives, improvements for life safety, handicap accessibility, drainage, utilities, lighting, playground, and athletic improvements. Another $7,745,000 was spent on land. Total, yes, sir.
That land that is not included in the new schools or is included in the new schools? And if it's separate, why did we not include it with the new school cost?
That number here, the 130, the 7 million and 130, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, is any of the 7.7 million for land part of the new schools, 130, like, is that a separate on top of that, or?
Right, well.
Did we not include land with the schools? Is it just construction? Like, what's the clarity there?
And, well, the land came in different ways. Let me explain. For Houghton Middle, you bought the land before the bond issue. So no land included in Houghton Middle. You bought 3 other parcels and that's included in that 7 million, that you've not built on. You've sold part of 1 parcel. So it skews the numbers a little bit, so I just thought I'd just have a separate line item for land, because we know what those numbers are. Okay. Any other question on that item? Does that satisfy your question?
Yeah, I was wanting to know how much of that 7.7 million went to new schools.
Of the land cost? Best guess off the top of my head is about $4.5 million.
And that was Benton High mainly?
Benton High, $3 million for Benton High. You spent about $1.1 million for Kingston, but you also sold off some acreage on Kingston and recouped about $800,000 or $900,000 of that. You also sold part of a parcel on Benton Road that's not yet, so it's just future land holdings. So probably about $4.5 million, roughly. Okay. So for all that money, we added 393 classrooms. In square footage, all the construction added 789,214 square feet, which increased the school board's building area by just over 25%. Prior to the bond issue, you had 3,075,000 square feet of school construction across the parish. Now you have 3,864,000 square feet, which, just for comparison, is about the size of just under 20 super Walmarts. It's a lot of space.
Okay. I have a follow-up question. And Mr. Babineau, you might not know this, and if you don't, if you would mind just getting back to us, it's not urgent. Our calculated cost per classroom on wings. I don't want to do new schools because I know there's admin and there's
Yeah.
cafeteria, there's all different things, but for our wings, which is a lot of just pure classrooms, it's about $315,000 per classroom. How does that compare to other regions and states?
I can't tell you. My guess is it's probably somewhat comparable. The difference is going to be is different parts of the country have different size classrooms. So, for instance, your typical classroom is around 800 square feet. Some districts have classrooms slightly smaller. Some districts have classrooms quite a bit larger, particularly at the elementary level. Some classrooms may be 50%, maybe 100% larger than your typical, because their curriculum is different, so they teach differently. So it'll be hard to compare, but I've got to think it's probably in that range, maybe a little bit higher. Keep in mind, too, all the construction was done pre-COVID. Everything was bid pre-COVID. So if you compare to a district that built a school after COVID, the numbers will get skewed because the prices went up substantially. So if you remember, we got the last three projects bid just as COVID was coming into play and got on the wire. And in fact, in the early months, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months of COVID, costs went down because so many public bodies across the country shut their projects down or stopped the process. And so all of a sudden there was a depletion in work out there, so contractors got very, very hungry. And if you recall, when we bid those projects, they came in about 15, 20% under budget for that reason, and then the cost shot right back up after that. Yeah. Any other question on that slide?
Thank you.
Okay. I think I got one more. Okay. So just for comparison, this is the various construction projects, new schools and wings. And what we thought we would do is just give you a comparison, what the funds available for construction were, which is this column, and then what the bids with the alternatives and the value engineering in this column. And the last column is the cost difference. So if it's in green, it meant we saved a little bit of money along the way. And I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 projects down there, or 11. So the difference between what we had budgeted and what the final cost was, we came in under by a total of $7,738,155. And for comparison, the fees we've been paid to date are $6,140,000. So you're to the good by about $1.6 million thereabouts. So just a little bit of information. And I've got one last slide if you have no more questions on that one. All right. So as I mentioned, the program is sunsetting. The schools have been built. We've been working for you now for 12 years. It's been a pleasure. I had no gray hair when we started. I think it's all been earned. But it's been an absolute pleasure to do it. This does conclude our work for the board. There'll be some minor things on Houghton, like I said, a follow-up inspection, some paperwork, a email, or something like that. But in general, the work has been completed. As your program manager, we do appreciate being allowed to serve in that capacity. I've enjoyed it. It's been very fulfilling professionally for me to do that. I've made some good friends and clients along the way and appreciate that. So this is the conclusion of our last program manager 2012 bond program report. There'll be further reports for the roofing repair and storm damage repairs that are coming up next. So I thank you for that very much. No questions. I'll go to the storm damage repair report, which is very, very brief. All right, next slide, Stuart. Just really 2 slides. So overall, the storm damage repair construction is 99.99% complete. The completion date we're shooting for is September 30th. There have been a total of 16 projects. 14 are 100% completed. 2 are substantially completed, means the work's been done. We're really waiting on final paperwork and then making final payment applications to the contractor. Those 2 projects are Airline and BIC. All the punch list work has been completed on Airline. Primarily what remains is paperwork, which is mostly warranties and closeouts. And after I wrote the report this morning, some of the warranties started coming to the office this afternoon. So actually the contractor is making progress on that right now. There is a change order that will be coming out, which is a $127,000 credit on Airline. There were some things that the adjuster's report had in error, too large quantities of materials that were not actually there, and so there's a credit coming back. So the overall project will come down by $127,000 in cost. And that change order actually just got uploaded to my office this afternoon as well. BIC, the work is actually at 97%. The paperwork remains, warranties and closeout documents. There's only one work item remaining on BIC, and that's which is this building. There is a skylight that has to be replaced. It was actually damaged, actually broken by the hailstorm. And it's been ordered for many, many months. It's supposed to be here next week. As soon as the contractor gets it, he assures me it's going to be installed. So with any luck, by this time next week, all the work will be 100% done. It'll just be a matter of paperwork. So that's where we are. Any questions on that slide? I believe there's one more. So just some quick stats. We'll start at the bottom, if you don't mind. The total cost of the project, all the program cost, $14,209,948. Of that, the school board is out of pocket $887,227, mostly because of the alternates that were added to the project. Some schools had damage, and then there were some things not damaged, but the board thought we should go ahead and make some repairs to the other parts of the roof at the same time. So we had complete warranties across the roof. And so I think it was money well spent. To date, your insurer has paid you $11,162,117. They still owe you, by our calculations, $2,160,604. And once that is done, which will be in short order, they will have reimbursed the school board $13,322,721. So pretty substantial, but I think it's worked out pretty well. So knock on wood. There'll probably be one final report once we get everything ironed out, and next time you have it at B&G, we'll give you a final report on the storm damage repair. But that concludes my report to the board this afternoon. Any other questions?
Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Babineau for, I counted up, it's been 9 years. I think y'all got on, you started just before the new board came on board and was elected in the fall of 14 and started in January of 15. But I know since then, there's been a lot of conversations and discussions and agreements, disagreements, and insights along the way. But you have remained steadfast in your duties, and I know you've had a lot going on during that time period, but from myself personally on the board, I appreciate all that you and your outfit have done for us over these years. And
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. It's been a
echoes the
pleasure.
sentiments of guys that are no longer here as well. So appreciate all you've done.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Smith.
We did make it, we survived.
We-
I think when we had those meetings in the beginning, we weren't really sure what all of us would like and how to go. And you added a lot of staff in that time period, and
Yeah.
I don't think any of us really knew what we were in store for.
We
but
met
I
quite
think-
often, didn't we? Sometimes more than once a week, if I remember.
I appreciate you and appreciate your contribution to making this bond proposal successful.
My pleasure.
And your team's hard work.
Thank you very much.
We are a little older now.
Any other, Mr. Babineau, before you step down, I'm not going to replow the ground that Mr. Newman and Ms. Smith have already covered, but I do want you to know how much I personally appreciate all you've done. I know I've aggravated you a few times. I didn't understand some numbers, or
You're
I
just
wanted to
doing your
know.
job.
Pardon?
You're just doing your job.
I want to know where some of that money was going. And, but you have just done a great job for us. Initially, it was hard to see, but as time went by, I'm convinced our quality of construction is superior because of your efforts and your colleagues' efforts. And the cost of that construction is appropriate because of your actions. I think you've saved us money, and you've ensured we received a good, high-quality product. And for that, I think everyone will express their deepest appreciation. We serve the citizens of this parish, and they were kind enough, good enough to entrust us with $210 million. And I can say without hesitancy or qualification, they've gotten their $210 million in value. And a primary reason for that is your efforts and the efforts of your colleagues. So we do appreciate it. Sorry we won't be seeing you that much anymore, but hope you
Well, I'll
will
be
come
around.
back. Sounds good. I hope we don't have any more roof repairs or storm damage. We've had enough of that to last us for a long
My
time.
niece have gotten to work out climbing roofs.
But thank you, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Ms. Brotherton?
Since we're doing buildings and grounds, just wanted to make a statement. The land that was purchased at Houghton High School, adjacent to the school, that we cleared off 7 acres, about 4 acres for parking. And last Friday night was the first home football game, and I want you to know that helped tremendously with the parking. Money well spent. The people that did the job to clear that area and make that a parking lot did an outstanding job, just outstanding. Well money spent, very needed and very helpful Friday night. I just wanted to throw that in to everyone that it was well spent.
Well, I think everybody agreed, we were very fortunate in being able to purchase that track.
Lucky.
And that will be a legacy that will serve the Houghton School site for years to come. We've used 4 acres of it. There's a lot more there.
Yeah.
And it will all ultimately be utilized. So I know we all questioned it, but ultimately it was something we just had to do. Any other comments or questions? If not, we stand adjourned.